Okay. um, you guys have been wanting an update on my whole interaction with the police and things that have been going on since then. Um, I'm not very good at this whole videoing myself thing, but what I do have is an update on the statement that I'm turning into internal affairs of exactly what happened so that we can see what they think about everything. And this will kind of let y'all know what happened that you didn't see in the video, and it will add a lot of context to things, and we'll see if y'all still feel the same way by the end of this. Um, so this is what I have for a report, and I'm reading it off of my phone. Monday, March 17th, 2025 at about 12:30 p.m. My father and I were at my sister's house in Von Army, Texas. We were adjusting the boost controller on his car, which requires him to drive up and down the road, periodically stopping so that I could make the necessary adjustments. After making a few adjustments, we noticed noticed a blue Dodge pickup truck pull up to the intersection of Rockport and Benton City Road. It made a left-hand turn southbound towards the sharp corner on Benton City Road. My father noticed that they were staying there for an unusually long period of time. They turned around and headed back towards us. They made a left turn onto a dirt road that is directly across from the Rockport intersection heading west. My dad then mentioned to me that he believed that they were going to complain to Miss Betty, who is my sister's landlord, about us being on the side of the road. I explained to him that we were doing nothing wrong, so we might as well finish what we were doing. I then noticed the same blue Dodge truck had crept up to the entrance of that same dirt road and was just sitting there watching us. I ignored them and turned my attention back to my dad and the birds chirping. Uh, as I stood there waiting for my dad to return, I noticed a Bexar County Sheriff patrol car. It's actually a patrol SUV, but whatever. Pull up to the intersection of Rockport and Benton City Road, pointing west. I then saw my dad's car heading south on Benton City Road. Uh, My dad then turned onto my sister's driveway, which is approximately 40 feet from the intersection the sheriff's car was stopped at. I followed behind my dad on foot. I should mention that her driveway is about 50 yards long and it requires you to take a left turn at the end of the driveway to get to her house. And the reason I put that is because when you go down there and you turn left, you can't see the end of the driveway from there. Uh, Next thing I know, a Somerset police car pulls up to my left as I was walking down the driveway. Uh, At this point, I'm about 25 yards onto my sister's property. The officer in the car yelled out to me, "Hey, are you all right?" I can't remember exactly what I said, but I do remember him asking me if I was okay. I do remember telling him I was fine. He then asked me to take my hands out of my jacket pockets, to which I complied. I know I didn't have to, but I did anyways. That is when he exited his car, walked over to me, and began patting me down and stating it was for officer safety. He then asked if I had any weapons on me. I replied, telling him that I had a pocket knife in my front pocket, and then informed him that I do not consent to searches. That is when he reached into my jeans pocket and pulled my knife out and tossed it into his car. Well, y'all can see in the video when he put it into his car. At this point, I informed him that this was a violation of my Fourth Amendment rights and that I would like my knife back. He then said he would give it back to me in a minute, to which I replied, "No, you need to give it back to me now." He then repeated what he just said. At this point, I began recording on my phone. Uh, I'm going to skip ahead to after the recording was stopped, as everything prior to that can be seen on the video that I presented. The reason I posted that video on Facebook is because the sergeant at Internal Affairs told me that I could post it on Facebook and then just give her the link so that they could have the video. That's why it got posted on there in the first place. I really didn't expect it to take off like it did. Um, I heard the silver-haired deputy uh, say that the supervisor told him to put me in handcuffs. Um, just to let you know, the silver-haired deputy. The reason why I say that is because when I spoke to the sergeant after I got out of jail, I had mentioned the silver-haired deputy that was the arresting officer, and I didn't know what his name was. I still don't know what his name is yet. So she knows who I'm talking about when I say the silver-haired deputy. Um, Anyways, I heard the silver-haired deputy say that his supervisor told him to put me in handcuffs. Uh, I went to place my hands behind my back, and as I did, the officer to my right forcefully grabbed my arms, which caused me to drop my phone. At this point, Deputy N. Regalado, badge 2059, he was the one in the video that wasn't the Somerset police officer, but the one to my left, the one that laughed when I said that I know my rights. That was N. Regalado. Picked up my phone and stopped the recording. The silver-haired deputy then came and said, "Let's put him in the car." I responded by saying, "No, you're not." I then tightened my body up. Y'all can kind of hear that part on the video. That's about when the video stopped, when I said, "No, you're not." It becomes a little fuzzy at this point in my memory, but I do remember resisting them, trying to, what I believe, was kidnap me and telling them that I was going to sue them and fuck them up in court. Now, on that part, I did say, I'm going to fuck you up, but I did actually mean that as in, I'm going to fuck you up in court. But still, I believe that they was kidnapping me, and they had no reason to arrest me anyways. Where was I at? Kidnap me and telling them that I was going to sue them and fuck them up in court. They then forcefully dragged me to the cruiser and attempted to put me inside. I actually stuck my leg out and put it on the like the running board Nerf bar thing on the side of the cruiser, and locked my knee, and they couldn't get me in the cruiser. And at that point, the silver-haired deputy kneed me as hard as he could in my leg, and I still refused to get in the cruiser. The same deputy then said, "Put him on the ground." Out of exhaustion, as well as being okay with not being placed in the car, I allowed them to do that. The same deputy then tried to shove my face into the dirt, tightening the handcuffs in the process, which caused me to lose feeling in my right hand. Ever since he did that, I cannot feel this part of my thumb right here. I lost feeling in my thumb right here because it was so tight right here and it swelled up. And today is the 29th. It's been 12 days since this happened, and I still have little feeling in my thumb right here. Which caused me to lose the feeling. My right hand. I begged them to loosen the cuffs due to the excruciating pain I was feeling. They responded they aren't meant to be comfortable. I screamed, "I can't feel my fucking thumb." They then told me that EMS was on its way. It was at this point my father and sister arrived and began questioning the officers as to why I was in handcuffs and on the ground. Like I said, they couldn't. He couldn't see that the officers had actually pulled up on me or any of that. He had pulled all the way up to my sister's house in his car, and he actually kind of seen through the trees when I didn't show up right away that the cops were down there messing with me, and he came down there to see what was going on. Father and sister began questioning officers while it's handcuffed on the ground. Okay. At some point, more officers and sheriff deputies from both Somerset and Bexar County showed up, including the Somerset Police Department police chief. One of the Somerset officers gave me some water. So I'm going to go ahead and pause at this point right here. I was on the ground beside the police cruiser, right beside the edge of the road, and more Somerset Police Department officers showed up, and I asked who they were and why they were there, and the one said that he was the police chief, and I told him what was going on. And I said, "I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know what's going on here." And I said, "I can't feel my fucking thumb." I was throwing a fit because I was upset, and yes, I was cussing the officers out because I was really upset that they was dragging me around and throwing me on the ground and everything else. And he said, "Unfortunately, it wasn't my department that put the handcuffs on you, so I can't loosen them up. I can't do anything about it." My mouth was completely dry. I had no spit in my mouth at all. And one of the officers that showed up after the fact of me being thrown on the ground and everything gave me some water. When EMS finally arrived, they asked me if they could take my vitals. I explained to them that my vitals were fine, and the issue was with my hand, that I couldn't feel my thumb due to the cuffs being so tight. It was at this point that the silver-haired deputy walked over to us and stated to the EMS, "Those handcuffs do not come off." I then stated to the paramedic again that I needed them loosened because I still could not feel my thumb. The paramedic asked me again if he could take my vitals. I reiterated to him once again that my vitals are fine and that the issue was my hand. The paramedic then stood up and said to the deputy, "He is refusing vitals, so I'm leaving." And he left the scene. After sitting there for another 10 minutes, the same silver-haired deputy came over to me and stated, "Get up, it's time to go." I asked him where we were going, and he stated we were going to see a judge. I asked him why and if I was under arrest. Uh, he said yes, and then I asked him what I was being arrested for. All he said in response was, "I already told you." I replied, "No, you didn't. What are you arresting me for?" He then said, "Resisting detention." I then yelled out to my dad to let him know I was being arrested. I was placed in the cop car without resisting. As they were shutting the door, I yelled out to my dad to call my wife. I would like to state that up to this point that I had not been told that I was under arrest, and once I was informed, I complied with the officers and did not resist, which all can be clearly seen and heard from the police body camera footage if they were still recording. The following is a statement from my sister. I'm not going to say her name on this video because she didn't tell me if I could or couldn't. The arresting time was 12:48 p.m. The deputy that had my brother's phone, the one who stopped the recording after everyone had already left, drove back to my house at 3:30 p.m., almost 3 hours later, to give me his phone. I didn't know why they still had it. The entire time of the arrest to the body scan at the county jail, my handcuffs were never loosened or adjusted, causing me to lose feeling in my right thumb as well as leaving visible cuts on my wrist, which all continues to this day. You can kind of sort of see a little bit the scarring. The camera on my laptop's crappy, but you can kind of see the scarring a little bit right here on my thumb, or on my hand rather, right there. And there was another one. I don't know if it'll even show up in the camera, but you can kind of see a line here from where the handcuffs got me. I actually have pictures on my wife's phone, and it also had cuts and marks on my right lower back. Anyways, upon entering the county jail through the Sally Port, the deputy sat in his car for approximately 15 minutes writing his report. I was sitting in the back seat, still handcuffed. He then turned his car off and began taking pictures of his report with his cell phone. While I was asking him to please loosen the cuffs because they were hurting, he ignored me. After what felt like another 10 minutes, he stated that it was time to go inside. I then asked once again for the cuff to be loosened due to the pain. He then said, "What's that?" as if he couldn't hear me. I repeated myself, to which he replied, "Okay, we'll get those cuffs off right now." Excuse me. He then walked me into the door with the cuffs still on. We stood there for another 10 minutes with me still in cuffs. There were two other deputies standing in the adjacent doorway talking about trucks, RVs, and generators. I wasn't upset at them, so I joined their conversation. At this point, the officers asked the silver-haired officer who was with me, "This guy seems nice. What's he in for?" To which my deputy replied, "He wouldn't give me his ID," to which I replied, "You never gave me reasonable and articulable suspicion of a crime." That's when the other deputy responded with, "Oh, he's one of those." I then responded to him by saying, "Yeah, I'm one of those who likes his rights." He responded, "Trust me, nobody likes their rights more than us." He then asked me, "You have red dirt all over you. Did they have to tackle you?" Before I could answer him, the silver-haired deputy interrupted and stated he wouldn't get in the car. I replied, "You never told me I was under arrest." He ignored me and stated to the other deputy I couldn't tase him because he was in handcuffs, to which the other deputy responded by saying, "Oh, he's one of those handcuff warriors, huh?" I responded by stating it didn't stop him from kicking me, to which the deputy responded, "Oh yeah, I would have done much worse." At this point, a female officer came into the room and removed my handcuffs. I thanked her for doing that and reiterated to her how much my hand hurt. She didn't respond, but instead escorted me to the body scan. I'm skipping over the uneventful section with the body scan and the strip search and back to where the abuse and mistreatment continued. After the body scan, they took me to the medical area where all they did was take my vitals and weighed me. I refused the TB test. While I was waiting to be strip searched, the silver-haired officer from earlier returned and started asking me mental health questions such as, are you depressed? Have you ever been suicidal? Do you feel like killing yourself right now? After answering all of his questions, he responded with, congratulations, you passed. That's when I noticed he had my property bag in his hand. He stated, I have a ring, a smartwatch, and a belt. And then he asked, where are your shoestrings? I handed them to him. I asked him where my phone, wallet, and keys were, to which he replied, I have no idea. I responded with, you should, you took them from me. He simply repeated his previous statement. After I was taken to set up my phone PIN, signed for my property at inmate banking, and asked the people in inmate banking about my phone, wallet, and keys, they said that what was there is what was brought to them, and if anything else was brought to them, they would have me come back and sign for it. They then escorted me to the main holding area. Without sitting down, I immediately walked over to a phone and attempted to make a call. This is where Officer J. Campos screamed at me from across the room, get off the phone now. I hung up the phone and went to find a seat. Campos continued, now because of you, everyone has to wait longer to use the phone. Which upset the other people in the holding area. Several of them yelled at the officer, he just got here, he didn't know. I quietly mumbled something under my breath in frustration over him trying to turn the others against me. He then yelled at me, I'm sorry, did you have something you wanted to say? To which I replied, shut the fuck up, and went to sit down. He sent another officer over to me. That officer told me to stand up, and I asked why, and he responded, because I said so. I looked at him and said, what happened to innocent until proven guilty? He replied, nobody said you were guilty of anything. So I stood up and he escorted me towards the single cells. It was at this point, in front of the men's toilet, a very tall, very large Hispanic or Samoan looking officer placed his hand on my chest and ordered me to stop. He then looked at Officer Campos, who was standing behind me, and said, put him in cuffs first. Campos grabbed my wrist, turned my right hand palm to the right, and left my left hand palm facing right, leaving my right arm twisted in a very uncomfortable position, literally forcefully slapped the cuffs on my wrists, and then grabbed my arm and escorted me into a solitary cell. As he walked me into the cell, he said under his breath, good luck keeping your pants dry, before he slammed the door into my back, forcing me into the cell. For what felt like 30 minutes, I was in the cell by myself, still in handcuffs. I pleaded with them to take the handcuffs off so I could use the toilet, and all I got in response from them was saying, that's tough. Even the trustees outside my cell were telling me that it wasn't right what they were doing, and they were going to talk to the officers about it. It took me banging my head against the wall of the cell for someone to come in and uncuff me. They literally left me in there by myself for 7 hours without food or water. I saw them skip my cell when it was mealtime. For the majority of the night, I was left in the cell alone. That's when I began to whistle. I was whistling to absolutely just annoy them. I whistled every tune that I could think of, and then I started loud whistling, the kind of whistling that you do with the two fingers, just to get them to fucking pay attention that I was in that room, because I was just left in there for what felt like to just die. That is when I began to whistle. That is when they brought someone else into the cell with me. Next mealtime, they brought bologna sandwiches. I asked several times throughout the night for my phone call and was ignored each time. The entire time I was in there, I did not get one single phone call. I had no idea where my phone was, my wallet, my keys, none of that, and I couldn't make a phone call. They wouldn't let me. They just left me in that cell. It wasn't until I was released I was able to make a phone call. The public defender even asked for me to have a phone call, and they ignored him. I was finally let out of my cell to join other people maybe an hour before sunrise the following morning. It was at this point that they finally let me see medical personnel, where they asked me about my medical history. At this point, it was shift change, and I want to point out that I've been in ankle cuffs this entire time. The sergeant on the new shift came in to release my ankle cuffs and to let me go because I was bailed out, and even she mentioned to me that they were on too tight. I agreed with her. She asked if I had told anyone about it. I said yes several times. She asked, and they never took them off? I replied, no, they just readjusted them. Now, this next part that I put in this complaint was Texas Admin Code 273.6. Inmates exhibiting behavior indicating that they are dangerous to themselves or others shall be managed in such a way as to minimize the threat of injury or harm. If the restraints are determined to be necessary, they shall be used in a humane manner only for the prevention of injury and not as a punitive measure. The decision to apply restraints shall be made by supervisory or medical personnel. Appropriate staff should assess the inmate's medical condition. Restraints should restrict movement of an inmate only to the degree necessary to avoid injurious behavior. Soft or padded restraints should be used when feasible. Inmates shall not be restrained in a position or manner that would exacerbate any physical infirmities. The documented observation of the inmates shall be conducted every 15 minutes at a minimum. The observation should include an assessment of the security of the restraints and inmate circulations to the extremities. The inmate should receive medical care a minimum of every 2 hours to include changing position, exercising extremities, offering nourishments and liquids, toilet facilities, and checking for medication needs and taking vital signs. These checks shall be documented. Documentation of the use of restraints shall include, but not limited to, the following: events leading up to the need for restraints, the time the restraints were applied, the justification for the use of the restraints, observation of the inmate's behavior and condition, the 15-minute checks, the time the restraints were removed. Skipping over 6 due to it referring to pregnant inmates. At the very end of the code, it states, restraints shall be removed from an inmate at the earliest possible time that the inmate no longer exhibits behavior necessitating restraints. In no case shall an inmate be left in restraints longer than 24 hours. When I was finally released, I went to retrieve my property. Somehow, my driver's license and my new Class M license were in my property bag. After I filled out my bond paperwork, my dad came to pick me up, and we immediately went to Internal Affairs to file a complaint. So that was my entire statement to Internal Affairs that will be turned in Monday. And I have a list of lawyers I need to try and call Monday. The lawyers that I've tried to call so far have either told me that they don't have time or they don't deal with civil rights cases. I'm just trying to get this figured out. They dropped the failure to ID but kept the resisting arrest charge. They dropped that while I was still in jail. They dropped the failure to ID, but they kept the resisting arrest charge. And yeah, so I'm just waiting to find out what happens. My court date is I think it's the 16th of April. Yes, 16th of April at 9:30 a.m. at County Court 12 in Bexar County in San Antonio. So, yeah, that's what I'm going for. And they didn't give me a court-appointed attorney, so I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to do. I can't afford an attorney. My wife is the only one that works. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I take care of my baby when she works in a hospital, so she's not a nurse, so she doesn't make a whole lot of money. So I don't know why they're not giving me a court-appointed attorney. So, but I guess we'll figure it out as it happens, and I'll give y'all an update as soon as I figure something out. But yeah, that's my update. And thank you guys for all of your support so far. It really does mean a lot to me, feeling like somebody's on my side about this, because I was literally just having a normal day trying to help my dad with his car, and then all of this happened, and now I have all this to worry about. So, once again, thank you guys for your support. It really does mean a lot.